The message arrived at 0347 hours, ship time. Captain Lee Dong-wook stared at the encrypted transmission on his private terminal aboard the human exploration vessel, Meridian. The blue glow of the screen cast shadows across his weathered face as he read the words that would change everything. They are going to kill him in 3 days. The sovereign who saved New Sol Colony. I need your help. Please respond if you still remember what justice means. Hannah Dong-wook leaned back in his command chair, his mind racing back to events. That happened 2 years ago. Plague outbreak on New Sol Colony had been devastating. 30,000 human settlers were dying from an unknown alien virus. The Galactic Council had declared the planet too dangerous to approach. Every species in the galaxy had turned their backs on the dying humans. Every species except one. Sovereign Kethmer of the Villani Empire had arrived with his personal medical ship. The alien ruler stood nearly 3 meters tall, with crystalline skin that changed colors based on his emotions. When he stepped onto the plague-ridden planet, his skin glowed bright silver, the Villani color for determination and hope. For 3 weeks, Kethmer worked alongside human doctors. He did not eat, he did not sleep. His crystalline hands, designed for energy manipulation, proved surprisingly gentle as he treated dying children. The Sovereign's advanced knowledge of molecular biology helped develop a cure that saved 28,000 lives. When the crisis ended, nothing in return. He simply smiled at the human medical team and said, "Life is precious in any form. Today we were all simply healers." Now that same being was sentenced to die. Dong-wook activated his personal communicator. "Dr. Park Hannah, this is Captain Lee. Respond immediately." The screen flickered to life, showing a woman in her early 30s with tired eyes and short black hair. Dr. Park Hannah had been the lead virologist during the New Sol Plague. She was also the woman Dong-wook had loved and lost when duty called them to different corners of the galaxy. "Dong-wook, thank you for responding," Hannah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was not sure you would remember me." "I remember everything," Dong-wook replied. "Tell me about Kethmer. What happened?" Hannah's expression grew dark. The Galactic Council demanded that the Villani Empire surrender their mining rights to their homeworld. The planet contains rare crystals that power faster than light travel. 3 major coalition species want to control the supply, and Kethmer refused. He said his people had lived on that world for 10,000 years. The crystals are not just resources to the Villani. They are part of their life cycle. Without them, the Villani will slowly lose their ability to manipulate energy. They will become powerless. Dong-wook understood. The Galactic Council was dominated by 3 major species: the military-focused Krathan, the merchant Zephyrians, and the technological Nexari. These 3 groups controlled most of the galaxy's resources. And politics. Smaller species, like the Villani and humans, were expected to obey without question. So they sentenced him to death for refusing to give up his homeworld. Worse, Hannah continued, they are calling it treason against the galactic community. Execution will be public, broadcast across all inhabited worlds. They want to make an example of him. Where is the execution taking place? Nexus Citadel, the massive space station in the neutral zone. It is the most secure location in the galaxy. Wook knew the station well. Nexus Citadel was home to 50,000 beings from dozens of species. It served as the administrative center for the Galactic Council. The station's defenses were legendary. Energy shields that could stop capital ship weapons. Automated defense drones that could destroy entire fleets. Security checkpoints that scanned for weapons, explosives, and even hostile thoughts. "Hannah, why are you telling me this? What do you expect me to do?" "I work there now," she said quietly. "I have been studying Villani biology for the past year. I have seen Kethmer in his holding cell. He still asks about the children from New Sol Colony. He still cares about people who are not his own species. That does not answer my question." Hannah leaned closer to the screen. "You are the only person I know who might actually do something about this." "The Galactic Council is wrong. Kethmer is not a traitor. He is a leader trying to protect his people. If I try to help him, humanity could be expelled from the galactic community. We just joined 3 years ago. We are still the newest members. I know the risks, Hannah said. But I also know you, Dongwook. You have never been able to walk away from injustice. The captain stared at the screen for a long moment. Hannah was right. During his 20 years of service, he had always chosen the difficult path when it was the right path. That principle had cost him promotions, relationships, and sometimes the respect of his superiors. But it had also saved lives and earned him the loyalty of his crew. Tell me about the station's defenses, he said finally. Hope flickered in Hannah's eyes. The execution chamber is located in the station's core. There are 12 security checkpoints between the docking bays and the chamber. 8. Each checkpoint scans for weapons, explosives, and biological threats. The guards are all Krathan warriors. Trained from birth for combat? What about the energy shields? They're powered by a central reactor core. The shields can absorb the energy output of 50 warships, but they have one weakness. During maintenance cycles, the shields drop for exactly 43 seconds every 6 hours. When is the next maintenance cycle? Tomorrow at 1400 hours, station time. Dongwook felt his pulse quicken. The plan was already forming in his mind. It would be dangerous, probably impossible, and definitely career-ending. But the image of Kethmar treating human children with gentle crystalline hands refused to leave his thoughts. Hannah, I need detailed schematics of the station's layout. Security protocols, guard rotations, everything you can access. I will get them to you within the hour. One more thing, Dongwook said. If this goes wrong, you need to deny any involvement. Tell them I forced you to help. I will not abandon you again, Hannah said firmly. The connection ended, leaving Dongwook alone with his thoughts. Outside the viewport, stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere among them, a good being was waiting to die for the crime of protecting his people. The captain activated the ship's internal communication system. Chief Engineer Kim Jae-sung, Pilot Officer Choi Mina, and Dr. Yoon Soo-jin, report to my ready room immediately. It was time to assemble a team. Time to plan the impossible. Time to prove that sometimes being human meant doing what was right. Regardless of the cost, the sovereign who had saved New Seoul Colony would not die alone. Chief Engineer Kim Jae-sung arrived first at the ready room. His broad shoulders filled the doorway as he entered with the confident stride of a man who had faced death many times before. At 35, Jae-sung was the oldest member of the senior crew. His hands bore the scars of countless repairs made under enemy fire during the border wars. Captain, you sounded urgent, Jae-sung said, settling into a chair across from Dongwook's desk. We have a situation that requires volunteers. Only, Dongwook replied. What I am about to tell you stays in this room. Pilot Officer Choi Mina entered next. Her flight suit still bearing grease stains from her latest maintenance check on the shuttle systems. At 28, she was the youngest officer on the bridge crew, but her reputation for impossible flying maneuvers was already legendary throughout the human fleet. Sorry for the delay, Captain, Mina said, brushing a strand of black hair from her eyes. The port engine was making strange noises again. Dr. Yoon Soo-jin was the last to arrive. The ship's chief medical officer moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had seen too much suffering. Her personnel file was mostly classified, but rumors suggested she had served with special forces before joining the exploration service. Right. Everyone is here, Dongwook said. Before I begin, I want to make something clear. What I'm about to propose will likely end our careers. It might also start a war. Anyone who wants to leave now can do so with no questions asked. The 3 officers exchanged glances. None of them moved toward the door. Good, Dongwook continued. 2 years ago, during the New Seoul Plague outbreak, we met an alien named Kethmar. He saved 28,000 human lives when no one else would help. The Villani sovereign, Jae-sung said, nodding. I remember him. Worked for 3 weeks straight without rest. That same being is scheduled for execution in 2 days. Galactic Council sentenced him to death for refusing to surrender his homeworld to the coalition species. Soo-jin leaned forward. What was his crime exactly? It's protecting his people? The coalition wants the crystal mines on the Villani homeworld. Kethmer said no, so they called it treason. Mina shook her head. That is not justice. That is politics. Exactly, Dongwook said. The execution is taking place at Nexus Citadel. I intend to stop it. Silence filled the room. The three officers stared at their captain, understanding the full weight of his words. Sir Jae-sung said carefully, Nexus Citadel is the most defended location in the galaxy. 50,000 inhabitants, energy shields that can stop entire fleets, and security systems designed by the Nexari themselves. I know the odds, Dongwook replied. That is why I'm only asking for volunteers. Count me in, Jae-sung said without hesitation. The coalition killed my family during their raid on the outer colonies. They called it a peacekeeping mission. I know what their justice looks like. Mina stood up and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. Captain, I have a daughter. She is only 6 months old. My wife is expecting me to come home. I understand, Dongwook said. This is not your fight. Did not let me finish, Mina said, turning back to face him. I want my daughter to grow up in a galaxy where good people like Kethmer are protected, not executed. I volunteer. All eyes turned to Dr. Sujin. The medical officer sat quietly for a moment, her fingers drumming against the table. I have seen what happens when good people do nothing, she said finally. During the border wars, I watched entire populations suffer because someone decided their lives were worth less than political convenience. If we can save one good being from that fate, we have to try. Dongwook felt a surge of pride for his crew, and these were not just officers following orders. There were people who understood that some principles were worth dying for. All right then, he said. Let me show you what we are up against. The captain activated the holographic display in the center of the room. A detailed image of Nexus Citadel appeared, rotating slowly in the blue light. The station was massive, shaped like a spinning wheel with multiple levels and docking bays extending from the central hub. The station has 12 levels, Dongwook explained. The execution chamber is located in the core, surrounded by security checkpoints. Each checkpoint is staffed by Krathan warriors and equipped with advanced scanning technology. What about the energy shields? Jae-sung asked. They drop for exactly 43 seconds every 6 hours during maintenance cycles. Our window is tomorrow at 1400 hours. Mina studied the display carefully. The docking bays are all monitored. How do we get inside without being detected? We use a stolen coalition transponder, Dongwook said. I have contacts in the intelligence service who owe me favors. We approach during a shift change when traffic is heaviest. Sujin pointed to a section of the station's lower levels. What about medical facilities? If we can create a medical emergency, it might provide cover for our movements. Good thinking, Dongwook said. The station has a large medical bay on level 7, but we need to be careful. It's too much chaos and they will lock down the entire station. The 4 officers spent the next 2 hours studying the station's layout, memorizing guard rotations and security protocols. Hannah had provided detailed schematics, but the information was 3 days old. Security procedures could change at any moment. The biggest problem is the execution chamber itself, Jae-sung said. It is designed to be escape-proof. Energy dampeners prevent any kind of electronic interference. Walls are made of compressed neutronium, impossible to break through. We do not need to break through the walls, Dongwook said. We need to create enough confusion to get Kethmer out during the chaos. And then what? Mina asked. Even if we rescue him, how do we escape? The entire station will be hunting us. We improvise, Dongwook said. The plan gets us to Kethmer. Everything after that depends on how well we adapt to circumstances. It was not a perfect plan. In fact, it was barely a plan at all. But it was their only chance. One more thing, Dongwook said. I guess if any of you are captured, deny that this was authorized. Tell them I forced you to participate. I will not have your family suffer for my decisions. With respect, Captain, Jae-sung said, we are all adults here. We know what we are signing up for. The meeting broke up at 0200 hours. Each officer had specific preparations to make. Jae-sung would modify their shuttle systems to avoid detection. Mina would plot the most efficient course to the station. Su Jin would prepare medical supplies and emergency equipment. As his crew left the ready room, Dongwook remained behind, staring at the holographic display of Nexus Citadel. Somewhere in that massive structure, a good being was waiting to die for the crime of protecting his people. The captain thought about the children on New Soul Colony. Their fever-bright eyes filled with hope as Kethmer worked tirelessly to save them. The Sovereign had asked for nothing in return for his service. Now it was time for humanity to return the favor. Tomorrow, they would either save a life or die trying. Either way, they would prove that being human meant more than just surviving. It meant standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. The execution chamber was a massive circular room carved from black stone. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the viewing galleries, their voices creating a low hum of anticipation. Representatives from 50 different species had come to witness what the Galactic Council called Justice Captain. Lee Dongwook pressed himself against the ventilation grate. Watching through the metal slats as guards brought Sovereign Kethmer into the chamber, the Villani leader walked with dignity despite the energy shackles around his wrists and ankles. His crystalline skin had turned deep purple, the color that meant acceptance of fate. Dongwook had been separated from his team during the chaos in the corridors. Jae-sung was somewhere in the lower levels, preparing to overload the power systems. Mina was at the docking bay, keeping their escape route ready. Su Jin was supposed to be creating a medical distraction, but the captain had not heard from her in over an hour. The Krathan executioner stepped forward, a massive warrior whose scaled hide gleamed under the chamber's lights. In his clawed hands, he held an energy blade that hummed with deadly power. One strike would end the life of the being who had saved New Soul Colony. Citizens of the galaxy, announced the Krathan prosecutor, his voice echoing through the chamber. Today we witness the fate of those who defy the will of the Galactic Council. Let this serve as a reminder that no being, no matter how noble, stands above the law. Kethmer raised his head, his purple skin beginning to shift towards silver. Even facing death, the Sovereign maintained his dignity. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. I do not ask for mercy, Kethmer said. I ask only that my people be remembered as more than the sum of their resources. We are not crystals to be mined or energy to be harvested. We are living beings with 10,000 years of history and culture. The prosecutor gestured impatiently. The condemned will now face the consequences of his crimes against galactic peace. Dongwook watched the executioner raise his blade. 15 seconds, a good being would die for the crime of protecting his people. The captain had no more time to wait for his team or for perfect conditions. He kicked out the ventilation grate, dropped 20 feet to the chamber floor. The impact sent shockwaves through his legs, but Dongwook rolled and came up running. Security guards shouted in alarm as the human sprinted toward the execution platform. Laser bolts sizzled past his head as he dodged between the stone pillars that supported the chamber's dome. "Human, what are you doing?" Kethmer called out, his skin shifting from purple to bright gold in surprise. Returning a favor, Dongwook shouted back, pulling the improvised explosive device from his belt. The device was crude, made from ship components and medical supplies, but it would create enough chaos to disrupt the execution. The explosion rocked the chamber, sending debris flying in all directions. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power grid fluctuated. In the confusion, Dongwook reached the execution platform and began working on Kethmer's energy shackles. "You should not have come," the Sovereign said, his voice filled with both gratitude and concern. "This will bring disaster upon your people." "My people taught me that some things are worth fighting for," Dongwook replied, his fingers working quickly on the shackle controls. "Your life is one of them." The shackles fell away just as Krathon guards surrounded the platform, their energy weapons charged with lethal intent, but Kethmer stepped forward, his crystalline hands beginning to glow with accumulated power. "Stand behind me, human," the Sovereign commanded. What happened next took Dongwook's breath away. Kethmer raised his hands and released a wave of pure energy that swept across the chamber. The blast was not lethal, but it sent every guard flying. Backward, their weapons scattered across the stone floor. I had forgotten what it felt like to be free, Kethmer said, his skin now blazing with golden light. Thank you for reminding me. Together, they fought their way toward the chamber's exit. The Sovereign's energy manipulation abilities proved devastating in the confined space. He could absorb power from the guards' weapons and redirect it as concentrated blasts. His crystalline skin became harder than armor, deflecting laser bolts and projectile weapons. But there were too many guards, and more were arriving every minute. Dongwook's improvised weapons were running low on power. They would not be able to fight their way through the entire station. Captain Lee, came Sujin's voice through his communicator. I am in the medical bay on level 7. I have created a biological contamination alert. Emergency protocols are sealing off sections of the station. Good work, Doctor. We are heading for the maintenance tunnels. Wait, Kethmer said, pressing his hand against a wall panel. I can sense the station's energy grid. Your engineer friend is overloading the power core, but he needs more time. 6 minutes? Be 7 if the safety systems? Whole Dongwook looked around the corridor they had entered. More guards were approaching from both directions. They were trapped with nowhere to run. Then we make our stand here, he said, reloading his weapon. Human, Kethmer said, his voice serious. What you have done today will change the galaxy. Whether we survive or not, your actions have shown that courage exists in small packages. We are going to survive, Dongwook said firmly. Did not come this far to watch you die in a hallway. The Sovereign's skin shifted to a color Dongwook had never seen before. A brilliant white that seemed to pulse with inner light. You are correct, my friend. Today is not a good day to die. They stood back to back as the guards closed in. Kethmer's hands crackled with energy while Dongwook checked his remaining ammunition. The sounds of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor like thunder. 4 New Soul Colony? Dongwook whispered. For justice, Kethmer replied. The battle for the station's heart was about to begin. In the distance, the first signs of Jae-sung's sabotage began to show as lights flickered and alarms wailed. The Sovereign who had saved human children was now fighting for his life alongside the human who had come to save him. The galaxy was about to learn that some bonds transcend species, politics, and even the threat of death itself. The corridor erupted into chaos as Krathan guards opened fire from both ends. Captain Lee Dongwook dove behind a support beam as laser bolts scorched the air where he had been standing. Beside him, Sovereign Kethmer raised his hands and created a shimmering energy barrier that deflected the incoming fire. How long can you maintain that shield? Dongwook shouted over the sound of weapons fire. Not long, Kethmer replied, his crystalline skin beginning to dim as he poured energy into the barrier. My people are not built for prolonged combat. The station shuddered as another explosion rocked the lower levels. Through his communicator, Dongwook heard Jae-sung's voice crackling with static. Captain, I am at the power core. The overload sequence is starting, but the safety systems are fighting me. I need another 4 minutes. We might not have 4 minutes, Dongwook replied, firing his weapon at the advancing guards. His shots were precise, but there were too many enemies and not enough cover. Then I will give you 4 minutes, came a new voice. Dr. Yoon Sujin appeared at the far end of the corridor, her medical uniform replaced by improvised combat gear. She carried a Krathon energy rifle and moved with the fluid grace of a trained warrior. Sujin, what are you doing here? Dongwook called out. My job, she replied, opening fire on the guards who had been advancing from the rear, protecting my crew. The 3 of them formed a triangle of defensive fire, but the situation was still desperate. More guards arrived every minute, and their ammunition was running low. Kethmer's energy barrier flickered as his strength began to fail. There are too many of them, the Sovereign said, his voice strained. You should leave me and escape while you can. Not happening, Dongwook said. We all leave together or not at all. Your loyalty is admirable, Kethmer said, but foolish. My death was already decided. You should not die for my mistakes. Your only mistake was trusting the Galactic Council to do the right thing, Sujin said. her rifle never stopping its deadly work. That makes you naive. Not wrong. The station shook again, more violently this time. Emergency lighting bathed the corridor in red as Jae-sung's sabotage began to take effect. Through the flickering lights, Dong-wook saw pilot Mina running toward them with a squad of security guards in pursuit. "Captain," she yelled, "the docking bay is compromised." "Then we find another way out," Dong-wook said. "What other way?" Mina demanded, sliding into cover beside them. "We are trapped in the middle of a space station with 50,000 hostiles." Kethmer's barrier collapsed as his energy reserves finally gave out. The Sovereign stumbled, his crystalline skin fading to a dull gray. Without the protective shield, the corridor became a killing field. "I cannot maintain the barrier any longer," Kethmer said weakly. "My power is nearly gone." Sujin looked at the advancing guards, then at her crewmates, then at the alien they had come to save. Her expression hardened with resolve. "Captain," she said quietly, "take care of my sister. Tell her I died doing something worthwhile." Before anyone could stop her, Sujin stood up and charged directly at the largest group of guards. Her rifle blazed as she ran, taking down 3 Krathan warriors before they could react. The guards turned their weapons on her, but she kept moving, drawing their fire away from her companions. "Sujin, no?" Dong-wook shouted, but it was too late. The doctor fell under a hail of laser fire, her body crumpling to the station floor. But her sacrifice had given them precious seconds. Jae-sung's voice crackled through the communicator. "Power core overload in 60 seconds. All energy systems failing. Shields are down." "The shields are down," Mina said, her voice filled with sudden hope. "We can get out through the maintenance airlocks." Kethmer knelt beside Sujin's still form, his hands glowing with faint energy. "She is gone," he said, his voice filled with grief. "But her sacrifice will not be forgotten." The Sovereign pressed his palm against Sujin's forehead and spoke words in his native language. His skin shifted to deep blue, the Villani color of mourning and honor. "What did you say?" Dong-wook asked. "Marked her as a warrior friend of mine." "People," Kethmer replied. "Her name will be remembered in our halls of honor for 1,000 generations." The lights went out completely as Jae-sung's sabotage reached its climax. In the darkness, emergency systems began shutting down throughout the station. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making movement difficult for the guards who were not used to zero-G combat. "Now," Dong-wook said. "We move now." They ran through the darkened corridors, guided by the faint glow of Kethmer's crystalline skin. The Sovereign had recovered enough energy to provide light, but he was still weak from maintaining the barrier. "This way," Mina said, leading them toward an emergency airlock. "I studied the station schematics. It should take us to the outer hull." Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter as the guards struggled to navigate in the darkness. The station's communication systems were failing, making it impossible for the security forces to coordinate their search. They reached the airlock just as the station's main power core went critical. The explosion sent shockwaves through the entire structure, but the blast doors held. Through the airlock's small window, they could see the stars and the faint outline of approaching ships. "Those are coalition vessels," Manas said, pointing at the distant lights. "They are coming to investigate the power failure." "Then we need to move fast," Dong-wook said. "Is there an escape pod in this section?" There, Kethmer pointed to a small alcove where emergency pods were stored. "But it will only hold 3 people." "You 3 go," Dong-wook said. "I will find another way." "No," Kethmer said firmly. "You saved my life. I will not leave you behind." "This is not open for debate," Dong-wook replied. "You are the leader. Your people need. I am just one human." "You are the human who risked everything for justice," Kethmer said. "The galaxy needs more beings like you." Mina grabbed both of them by the shoulders. "We are all leaving together. The pod has emergency life support for 4 people if we do not mind being crowded." They squeezed into the tiny escape pod just as coalition forces began boarding the damaged station. The pod's simple engine fired, carrying them away from Nexus Citadel toward the safety of deep space. As they flew through the darkness, Dong-wook looked back at the station where Dr. Yoon Soo-jin had given her life. Her sacrifice would not be forgotten. She had proven that humans would die for their principles, even when those principles involved protecting alien lives. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or weapons, but the willingness to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost.